What happened to Ludwig's hearing problem after it first appeared in the summer of 1799? It fluctuated, sometimes a little better, sometimes worse. In 1805, for example, he led the rehearsals for the opera Leonore without any problems. And as late as 1811 and 1812, he was able to precisely correct his students' piano playing. In between, however, there were always phases of hearing loss. So he was sometimes polycyclic and sometimes in hanging healing. In the year after 1813, his hearing continued to worsen. In April 1814, he gave his last chamber music concert. The first thing that went completely deaf was his right ear, and in 1815 he ordered cup and funnel-shaped hearing aids only for his left ear because it was still functioning very poorly. From 1818 onwards, he had to use notebooks as a means of conversation. Beethoven was deaf in both ears. Where did the constant ebb and flow of his hearing come from? Why did it steadily decline after 1813 to the point of total failure? And why was his right mother-child ear deaf first? But first, let's see how things continued with Ludwig's partner ear, i.e. the Josephine conflict. Josephine has moved to Prague with her husband, so contact between the two ebbed for the time being. In January 1804, Josephine's husband died unexpectedly. Josephine contacted Beethoven again in early summer, and the grieving widow received music therapy from him almost daily. There was whispering and rumors about the two in aristocratic circles, but the two continued their relationship from 1799 in strict secrecy. During this time, Ludwig wrote Josephine several passionate love letters, all of which were similar in style to those to the mysterious, immortal beloved. But marriage was out of the question for Josephine. On the one hand, the difference in class got in the way, and on the other hand, she was now responsible for her children. She probably felt that the impulsive Beethoven was not suitable as an educator, which was proven by the nephew story. I'll get to that soon. Josephine distanced herself more and more from Beethoven, and from September 1807 she stopped contact completely. In spring 1812, Josephine was left by her second husband, Baron von Stackelberg. Josephine's diary entries show that she planned to travel to Prague in the summer of 1812. Beethoven was also in Prague in the summer of 1812, where he unexpectedly met the woman he described as his immortal beloved in his famous letter of July 6, 1812 on July 3rd. There is evidence that Beethoven skipped an appointment on the evening of July 3rd without an excuse. I wonder why. The reason must have been the unexpected reunion with Josephine. Several pages have been cut out of Josephine's diary for this period, and there are also noticeable gaps in the notes of her sister Teresa, which may even have been deliberately removed. Why? We will find out later. What remains to be said is that even after this episode, Josephine did not decide in favor of Ludwig. In short, the rest of Josephine's life was one big drama. The resulting physical consequences took their toll on her. She died, suffering for years, lonely and completely impoverished, on March 31st, 1821, at the age of just 42. Beethoven is said to have supported her in her final years wherever he could. The last documented meeting of their unhappy love took place in 1816. Teresa wrote about the relationship. Why didn't my sister Josephine take him as her husband as a widow dime? She would have been happier than with Stackelberg. Motherly love driven her to renounce her own happiness. Between the Josephine episodes, Beethoven threw himself into various love affairs with aristocratic women. Almost all of them took an identical course and had the same negative outcome as with Josephine. Ludwig was dumped. Examples include Therese von Malfatti and the Countess Giulietta Guicciardi. The constant ups and downs with women who resembled Josephine, other tracks such as the piano, teaching situations, tones, etc., explain why his hearing conflict led to a hanging healing polycyclic course and thus to deafness in his partner ear. What is important for our further research on the right mother-child ear, which was first to go completely deaf, is the birth of a child on April 8, 1813, exactly 9 months after the meeting in Prague and the letter of the immortal beloved, Minona, Josephine's seventh child, was born. Minona will have been the result of their surprising, passionate encounter on July 3rd and the following night. She was almost certainly Ludwig's daughter. With this knowledge, let us now finally approach Beethoven's right mother-child ear. There must have been more children in Beethoven's life, as his hearing loss in the mother-child ear had already begun before 1813, i.e. before Minona's birth. We can rule out his mother as a DHS possibility, as she had already died in 1787. This leaves only the children's variant. There are two possibilities here. Either Ludwig considered someone to be his own child, or, contrary to the official biography, he actually had children of his own in the manner of Minona. There are plausible and verifiable explanations for both possibilities in Beethoven's life. I'll start with the first possibility. The death of his stable, determined mother was a catastrophe for Ludwig's father. He, who was already very unstable, lost all stability and within a few weeks fell into a downward spiral of alcoholism and irresponsibility. This even went so far that in 1789 Ludwig was awarded the power of disposal over half of his father's pension by the court to support his younger brothers Caspar and Nikolaus. From one day to the next, the teenager Ludwig had to take on the role of mother and father to his younger brothers and look after them. You can see how he was absorbed in this role by the fact that he later repeatedly interfered in their private affairs. This went so far that he wanted to forbid Caspar to marry, for example, because he did not agree with his choice of wife. It is safe to assume that he no longer considered his younger brothers to be on his partner's side, but on the mother-child side. Caspar followed Ludwig to Wien in 1794. From 1800, Caspar took on business activities for Ludwig, and in 1802 he became his private secretary. Caspar's behavior and conduct, both privately and in business, repeatedly led to tensions and conflicts with Ludwig. Around 1801, for example, he is said to have sold 3 piano sonatas behind Ludwig's back. In the initial phase of Caspar's management activities in particular, Ludwig must have heard a lot of things that he certainly did not want to hear, as everything fell back on him. There are even reports of scuffles between the two. Nevertheless, Ludwig always defended his little brother. After all, he was his father. This is where he may have caught the auditory conflict for his right ear, when he heard something from his child again. Until Caspar's death in 1815, his relationship with him, like his relationships with his partners, was also characterized by constant ups and downs. In my opinion, however, the following incident was decisive for the deafness of Ludwig's right ear. On April 12, 1813, Caspar signed a guardianship agreement for his son Karl. Ludwig was to become the guardian of his nephew Karl in the event of Caspar's death. Ludwig again became father. Dr. Hammer writes that Karl was even Beethoven's biological son. At the time of Karl's conception, Ludwig lived together with his brother Caspar in a shared apartment. Ludwig was also vehemently opposed to Caspar's marriage to the pregnant Johanna, Karl's mother. Was he jealous that she had chosen his brother? Unusually for the time, the marriage produced no further children, which suggests that Caspar was unable to conceive. Beethoven referred to his Karl in letters as "dear boy, dear son, my little son." He signed letters to him with, among others, "your faithful father" or "your faithful true father." Whether in the flesh or not, from 1813 Ludwig was once again father, and his son Karl determined his life from then on, especially after the death of his brother Caspar in 1815. The nephew conflict has been sufficiently described in Beethoven's research. The whole thing culminated in a suicide attempt by Karl in 1826. Be that as it may, the hearing conflict suffered through Caspar around 1801 caused more or less problems in the mother-child ear until 1813, depending on the tracks. His nephew Karl made it increasingly permanent after 1813, with the result that the right ear went completely deaf first. And this despite the fact that the left ear had initially caused problems. This not only shows us once again how accurate Germanische Heilkunde is. The synchronicity also confirms that Beethoven was biologically left-handed. The second possibility of a child conflict leads us back to his immortal beloved. His love affair with Josephine officially ended in the summer of 1799 after she married Count Daim on July 29. Ludwig, however, continued to associate with the Daim family. Part 1. It is therefore quite possible that Ludwig was the father of her child Vicky, born in May 1800, and that the Minona story had already taken place 13 years earlier. Ludwig, I'm pregnant, can't be, would be the possible double DHS according to Dr. Hamer, which then repeated itself in 1806 with Karl and Johanna and in 1813 with Minona and again Josephine, destroying his hearing in a hanging healing. Perhaps this is why he fought so doggedly for Karl, as he had lost Vicky and Minona. And if you are still unsure whether Minona was a child of Ludwig and Josephine, just read. Anonym, the unknown. Now you also know why Teresa and Josephine's diaries pages are missing. Nobody was allowed to know. It is fascinating what religious, political or moral ideas can do to people. What would have become of Beethoven if he had had a sheltered childhood? If he had not had to take on the role of father and mother at an early age? Or if there had been no nonsensical division of status? In short, what would he have become if he had been able to live according to the biological laws discovered by Dr. Hamer, i.e., according to our human biological code? Surely his immortal Josephine would have heard him, but surely we would not have his immortal music.